Welcome to Mayfidav TV. You are highly welcomed. Please kindly subscribe, like and share this video. Thank you. The Sahel region in Africa holds great importance for France. Similarly, France's involvement in Afghanistan was motivated by a desire to align with the United States, particularly after not supporting the US in 2003. However, Africa has historically been more significant to France. While there is no immediate discussion, France's presence in Africa is expected to be debated soon, especially since France has been expelled from several African countries. Despite this, France has developed a 10-year plan to reassert its control over the continent, although many African leaders are resistant to hosting French officials. This raises questions about France's intentions and whether they aim to provoke African nations. General François Lecointre, a former chief of staff of the French army, recently proposed a renewed European commitment to Africa, including a strategic plan for the next decade. This plan has stirred strong reactions, particularly from nations like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Chad, which have expelled foreign forces to reclaim their sovereignty. Lecointre's proposal involves a strategic reinvasion of Africa, focusing on the Sahel region, under the guise of combating terrorism and stabilizing the area. Critics argue that this is a thinly veiled attempt to reassert control over Africa's resources and strategic locations, ignoring the sovereignty and capabilities of African nations. The specifics of Lecointre's plan include deploying European troops, establishing military bases, and implementing economic reforms overseen by European experts. These reforms are viewed as mechanisms to ensure continued European control over Africa's valuable resources, like gold, uranium, and oil. The plan also includes training local security forces, which critics say would turn them into proxies for European interests. This perceived arrogance has sparked outrage among African leaders and citizens, who see it as an affront to their independence. President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso has been particularly vocal in his opposition to this proposal, emphasizing the need for a high-intensity war of decolonization. Traore's strategy includes strengthening the military, fostering economic resilience, and promoting social cohesion. He calls for internal unity to effectively resist external threats and urges the nation to focus on building a self-sufficient economy that reduces dependence on foreign aid. Traore's administration is also working to address internal conflicts, promote national pride, and foster regional alliances to create a united front against foreign intervention. His message has resonated deeply, sparking grassroots movements and civil society organizations to support the government's efforts. On the diplomatic front, Traore seeks to build international support for Burkina Faso's sovereignty and independence. France's new plan to reassert control in Africa is seen as a desperate attempt to maintain its influence over its former colonies. Despite the expulsion of French forces from countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Chad, France's interest in exploiting Africa's resources persists. This strategy, led by General Lecointre, involves deploying European troops, establishing military bases, and implementing economic reforms. However, President Traore's firm stance and the united resistance of African leaders suggest that France's ambitions will face formidable opposition. Given the strong resistance from African leaders, France faces limited options. It might resort to offering economic aid or financial incentives, but these come with strings attached, often leading to increased dependency and loss of sovereignty. Another approach could be direct military interventions, but this is likely to provoke resistance and conflict. France might also leverage its alliances within international organizations to apply diplomatic pressure or increase its soft power efforts. However, any leader who aligns with France under these conditions would likely be viewed as a puppet, facing significant opposition from their people. France might find acceptance in nations experiencing severe economic crises or political instability, where immediate aid could overshadow long-term considerations of sovereignty. However, this acceptance would likely be short-lived, as popular sentiment in Africa increasingly favors genuine independence and self-determination. In conclusion, General Lecointre's proposal for a renewed European commitment to Africa has reignited resistance among African nations. The battle for Africa's independence is ongoing, requiring determination, strategic planning, and collective effort. As Burkina Faso and its allies prepare for the challenges ahead, their resolve serves as a beacon of hope for a future where Africa can stand sovereign and free from its colonial past. Since his election in 2017, President Emmanuel Macron has tried to distance himself from established and widely criticized patterns of France's Africa policy. He diversified relations with Africa in regional and substantive terms, integrated non-state actors, and cultivated a comparatively open approach to France's problematic past on the continent. However, Macron's efforts to craft a narrative of change was overshadowed by path dependencies, above all the continuation of the military engagement in the Sahel and incoherent relations with autocratic governments. The involuntary military withdrawal, first from Mali 2022, from Burkina Faso 2023, and finally from Niger, announced for late 2023, marks a historic turning point in Franco-African relations. The question is no longer whether relations between France and its former colonies will change. The real question is whether Paris will be able to shape this change, or if it will be a mere bystander to a transformation that is largely driven by African actors. When he became president, Emmanuel Macron was undoubtedly aware of France's reputation problem in Africa. His response was to make a clearly recognizable effort in crafting a new narrative to demonstrate his political will for changing relations with France's former colonies in Africa. The target audience of Macron's message of change and renewal are the African publics and civil society actors who, in the eyes of the president, stand for Africa's positive dynamics: entrepreneurs, intellectuals, youths, artists, but also members of the diaspora. Macron wants to use these actors as bridge builders to establish new partnerships and leave the undesirable aspects of France's reputation in Africa behind. Emblematic of this method was the new format of the traditional Africa-France Summit, held in Montpellier in October 2021. Contrary to diplomatic traditions, no African government representatives were invited, but only non-state and civil society actors. It remains questionable, however, to what extent this carefully selected circle of civil society figures represents broader societal currents in Africa, or whether it is able to exert political influence at home. In addition to his public diplomacy activities, Macron has also engaged a number of substantive political and economic issues. It is the policy of those who run France which poses a problem in Africa, so as long as the state is not in an imperialist spirit, there is no problem, he said in this interview recorded on August 31st. We must agree to look at each other as equals, and we must agree to review all of our cooperation, he added. Without naming it, he criticized France for having given independence and placed people at the head of certain states. According to him, we have led people to sign a lot of agreements which prevent us from developing, adding that imperialist states are not just France, there are others, he said without quoting them. Captain Ibrahim Traore, who came to power almost a year ago through a coup d'etat, also questioned the effectiveness of the presence of French soldiers in Burkina Faso as part of the anti-jihadist fight, which he demanded the departure in January. Burkina has since been seeking new cooperation. We have new partners who support us in terms of equipment and other things, he added, without naming them. Burkina Faso's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Olivier Rouamba, expressed her country's desire to strengthen bilateral cooperation with Iran on Monday during an interview in Tehran with President Ibrahim Raisi. A Russian delegation spoke with Mr. Traore last week in Ouagadougou on questions of development and military cooperation, and Captain Traore went to St. Petersburg in July for the Russia-Africa Summit. He reaffirmed his country's support for Niger, the scene of a coup d'etat on July 26, with which Burkina shares the so-called three borders area between Mali, Niger, and Burkina, considered a den of jihadist groups. The strategic importance of Africa, particularly the Sahel region, cannot be understated for France, making the recent expulsion from various African countries a significant blow. France's 10-year plan, spearheaded by General François Lecointre, aims to regain influence through a combination of military, economic, and diplomatic efforts. However, this plan has been met with fierce resistance from African leaders and citizens, highlighting the deep-seated desire for true independence and self-determination across the continent. President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso has become a prominent voice against this neo-colonial attempt. His call for high-intensity war of decolonization underscores the urgency and seriousness with which African leaders view these developments. Traore's administration focuses on building military strength, economic resilience, and social cohesion, aiming to create a self-sufficient nation capable of resisting external pressures. Military reforms under Traore's leadership include upgrading equipment, enhancing training, and fostering patriotism among the troops. Economic strategies involve diversifying the economy, reducing reliance on foreign aid, and investing in key sectors such as agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. Social policies aim to promote unity, address internal conflicts, and ensure equitable distribution of resources. This multifaceted approach seeks to create a robust internal front capable of withstanding any external threats. Traore also emphasizes the importance of education and awareness in building national resilience. By educating citizens about the history of colonialism and the ongoing threats to sovereignty, the administration aims to foster a well-informed and vigilant populace. This, coupled with regional alliances, strengthens the overall resistance against recolonization efforts. On the international stage, Burkina Faso seeks to build coalitions with supportive nations and leverage platforms like the African Union and United Nations to garner global support. This diplomatic effort aims to counterbalance the influence of former colonial powers and ensure a fair international order. France's new plan faces significant challenges. African nations, led by figures like Traore, are determined to protect their sovereignty. The proposed reinvasion, framed as a counter-terrorism effort, is seen as a pretext for resource exploitation and control. The arrogance embedded in this plan, assuming African nations need European oversight, has ignited strong resistance and a renewed sense of unity among African leaders and citizens. Given the resolute opposition, France's options are limited and fraught with risks. Offering economic incentives might temporarily sway some nations, but these come with conditions that undermine sovereignty. Direct military interventions are likely to provoke resistance and conflict, while diplomatic pressure through international alliances could backfire by solidifying anti-colonial sentiments. The most sustainable path for France would be to respect the sovereignty and independence of African nations, focusing on genuine partnerships based on mutual respect and benefit. However, the historical context of exploitation and control complicates this approach. As the situation unfolds, the resilience and strategic planning of African nations like Burkina Faso serve as a powerful example of the continent's determination to reclaim its destiny. The collective efforts of leaders, citizens, and international allies underscore a broader movement towards true independence and self-determination, challenging any attempts to reassert colonial control. The future of Africa hinges on the ability of its nations to unite, resist external pressures, and build sustainable, self-sufficient economies. The legacy of colonialism casts a long shadow, but the current wave of resistance and resilience offers hope for a future where Africa can stand tall, sovereign, and independent. The struggle is far from over, but the resolve of leaders like President Ibrahim Traore and the collective spirit of the African people highlight a path towards enduring freedom and prosperity.